So much about what we call life has to do with the tribe. As a matter of fact, just about everything that keeps people locked on the surface is the tribe. And what I mean by the tribe is that I'm talking specifically in terms of circuitry. That is, if you look at tribal circuitry, which basically has as its foundation its relationship between the sacral center and the ego. And in this very special configuration of the tribe, in which both the sacral and the ego are primary points, that what you have is the basic life force. That is the reproductive concentration that you see coming out of the sacral in the 59.6 or coming out of the sacral in the 27.50. And then you see the whole essence of our lives. That is, on the left-hand side through the spleen, the tribe takes us through all of our material dilemmas. It takes us through our fears of failure, our fears of being eliminated because we don't have the capacity to make enough money, to bring enough resources into our life, enough material into our life. And then you look at the emotional side of the tribe, and the emotional side of the tribe coordinates our social interaction with the other, whether that is our sexual interaction, the way in which we build our families, the way in which we make our bonds as partners, the way in which we live together, the rules that we live by, the land that we secure as territory, the environments that we designed and build for ourselves, the temples that we construct and populate. All of that is part of the tribe. And when you get right down to it and you look at the 6 billion humans on this planet, you will see that they spend most of their time dealing with tribal circuitry. The tribe is life. But it isn't the whole story of the body graph. You know, if you really think about it, when you're looking at tribal circuitry within the body graph, you're actually looking at the most primal aspects of survival of this species. I mean, these are just very, very primal aspects of survival. And that, in fact, the way we are designed as mammals to be able to survive, provide for ourselves, live with each other, all of that has basically been built into the tribe. And when you look at the nature of the collective, and we're going to begin today with the collective, we're going to begin with logic. When you look at the collective in essence has very little to do with life in the moment. The collective is about where are we going in the future and where have we come from the past. And so much about the nature of the collective is that if you think about life itself and you think about it as a driver of a vehicle, when you're dealing with the collective is never aware of where it really is. It's either looking way down the highway to see where it could go, or it's looking in the rear view mirror to see how far it's come. But none of that brings it into what is the essence of living, which is sex and food and shelter and bonding and all of these things that are part of the tribe. And individuality? As a Canadian, I'm very proud of some of the wonderful slang expressions that Canadians have. And one of them is called being a shit disturber, which I think is an extraordinary expression. You know, because after a while it sort of gets, you don't smell it. But if you just move it around a bit, everybody smells it, eh? And this is one of the things about individuality, is that individuality is really a pain in the neck of the whole process. Because individuality threatens the rules. Individuality is deeply upsetting to the collective because it can operate outside of the collective. Where are we going and where have we been? And suddenly individuality jumps up and says, no, be here now. And the collective goes, oh, that's not for me. And the same thing with the tribe. As seductive as the individual is for the tribe because they're always looking for new genes, the fact of the matter is that individuals will change the rules. And because they will change the rules, because this is a mutative force, this is not something that those who are living life want to have anything to do with. You don't want the rules to be changed overnight. You just don't. You can see this all the time in terms of, you don't want to be a telex salesman anymore. All of a sudden mutation eliminates your job. It eliminates everything. It's gone. All of a sudden it's just gone, And so you end up hating the technology that's replaced it. But the reality is that individuality comes into the game and it's a crapshoot. It's like Einstein's famous line about, God wasn't throwing dice. Well, God didn't know about us mutated beings. It's all a crapshoot. At any given moment, all of this can fall apart. Ask Newton. At any moment, Einstein can show up. And then Newton says, what am I supposed to do? Well. So when we're looking at formats, we are looking at a frequency that is pushing the collective individual process. And that, for years, particularly in the early years, because in the early years, I did this kind of detail work. And there were always these people saying, well, where's the tribal format? Tribe doesn't need a format. It just doesn't. And it's obvious. The tribe does not need a format. But everything else does in order to survive as a force. The tribe is a self-fulfilling reproductive process. But the rest of it isn't. Now, of course, it's all in the sacral. It's driven by the fertility of the sacral. But the first thing to grasp about these three format energies is that what they're here to bring to us is a deep threat to our mental well-being. Really. There is no other place where you find such depth of potential depression as you do between the root and the sacral, because they're not part of life. And what is so interesting about it is that the depression, and again, everything about human design is language. It's language. Depression is a word that has associated with it a deeply negative connotation. If you say that somebody is depressed, you go, oh my. It has this connotation that depression in and of itself is a negative. Now, one of the things that I know about correctness is that it can be correct to be depressed, just as it can be correct to kill, though people don't like to hear all that kind of stuff. But the fact is that depression isn't something in and of itself that is a negative. It's not pleasant. That's for certain. And the whole thing to see about depression is that almost all depression, there are tribal variations, but it's not the same kind of thing. Almost all depression is about not having something other than the life business to occupy you. Think about that. See, look, the tribe takes care of everything. If we could do a body graph and we have no collective and we have no individuality, I can take you to any group of gorillas in Africa and show you what we look like. And we might be a little more sophisticated. Maybe. Not much. Because that is the mechanism for living. And by the way, when I say that, I don't mean to put down gorillas. Some of my best friends are gorillas. Something like that. After all, they have their social structure and they seem to be rather intelligent. They even have an opposable thumb, bless their hearts. They're interesting creatures. They have an interesting community. They have an interesting way of life. I assume gorillas have gods, But the reality is that that's all they've got. That's all they've got. And you see, we were not intended for just that. We weren't. And when you think about where intelligence comes from, everything that we think of as human intelligence is rooted in the 50th gate in the spleen. It is out of the 50th gate that we get the three streams of intelligence. That is, we get the instinctive intelligence, which is fundamentally tribal. We get the intuitive intelligence that is individual, and we get the judgmental intelligence that is collective, that is comparative intelligence. Now, what's so interesting is that out of the tribal source comes this root of intelligence that goes beyond instinct. When you look at the mammalian design, you see right away how this works. And for us, you have to see that we have an incredibly diverse instinctive process, because it's all out of instinct. And out of instinct has come mutative intuition. You know, it's part of our evolutionary process as we evolved from being basically, primates into this, this dance that we've been in for the last several million years. And everything about our development as a consciousness has nothing to do with the tribe. Nothing. Our consciousness and the development of our consciousness is collective and individual. This is the way the collective maps our consciousness. I mean, if it's like looking at crosses and you see that there is a cross of consciousness. And it is the most collective cross you can imagine. Nothing but collective gates. Consciousness is a mapping process. No consciousness without memory. No consciousness without being able to codify the memory into structures. Even when you look at the abstract format, you'll see that the abstract format begins with a description of structure. It's about seeing things and in being able to code them, being able to remember them and place them in the code, and then being able to forward them to the next generation. We map our consciousness. And out of that we have this illusion of consciousness growth. There is no growth of consciousness in the collective. There is only the mapping of the way. There is mutative growth in consciousness through individual contribution. And so the leaps in consciousness are mutative. Now the tribe hates all this shit. It really does. See, the tribe doesn't need to be concerned about the development of its consciousness. And if you go into the poorest areas on the planet in terms of resources, governmental advantages, whatever you go, you get down to that tribal level, you get into this nice, neat bubble where there's nothing else. So for me, format energies drive us to be what we think of as human. It's the format energy that makes you different from the beast. It's the format energy that gives you the illusion that you're better than the beast. Not only that, it's the format energy that actually can bring you to a point of understanding how to manipulate everything around you, which means the manipulation of the tribe. And of course, that's what you get to see. Ultimately, we have reached this point in the development of our consciousness and our civilization that the tribe is at the weakest point it's ever been. Because we have this collective patina that we've been able to layer over it. And the fact is that mutation is something that is available today at a level that's never been available before. So this process of going through the formats, I'm not just going to take you through the actual format channel itself. That's where I will begin in terms of looking at the format for what it is. But I want you to see the context of the format through the circuit. And I want you to be able to see how you can take the format energy, its line values, and understand how that works in any other aspect within that circuit, because it's the guiding force of the way that circuit's going to work. This is the only place that the root and the sacral meet. And you have this wonderful, it's a real beauty, the way to imagine the movement of Kundalini through the body graph, to see this enormous column of power that starts at the root, that goes to the sacral, that pushes up to the identity, and all the way through. And you follow those three, and they go right through the center of the body graph. It's like it's the whole direction of our consciousness. But you can see that it's just that. It's this driving force that's driving us towards something. Later in the Ibiza event, I'm going to be doing global cycles, and I'm going to be talking about where those format energies were intended to take us. That's what it's all about, after all. All of this is just about consciousness and form. All of this is just about how far the passenger can get in getting to the point of surrender and penetrating the illusion. Because it's just, in the end, about penetrating the illusion. The nice thing about the format energies is that they don't want to be awake. That's what I like about them. Only the tribe wants to be enlightened, be awake. Only the tribe is running around saying, where's God? This is tribal business because it's tribal glue. It's glue. It's like watching last night these tens of thousands of Catholics in St. Peter's Square as the Pope is dying. And this glue, you've got these thousands of strangers, all of them standing together at night in Rome this time of the year. It's not pleasant, it's cold, and there's really nothing to do. It's not like you got anything to do. There's no partying going on. There's no really good music. It's sad and this and that. People are praying, whatever. But there's a glue in all of that. Because if you talk to those people tomorrow, a year from now, 10 years from now, they will tell you that was the most glorious spiritual experience of their life. They were in the glue, And this is what the tribe loves. Religion is glue. That's all it's ever been. It holds everything together. Not only does it hold it together, but it makes somebody who's not part of your glue the enemy. Your glue is different than my glue, So you stay over there in that valley, and I'll stay over here in this valley, and then we can have a competition between whose glue is better. My glue's better than your glue. It was so interesting. I thank the gods every day for cable network news. It is so damn entertaining, right? So the Pope is dying, and you've got some female talking head who is interviewing 4 holy men, right? And you got an imam, and you've got a Catholic priest, and you've got a rabbi, and you've got some Protestant, whatever, I don't know. Anyway, a collection of, holy guys. And they're all working so hard to be nice. Oh, no, it was really incredible. It's like, yes, he was a good man. But his glue's different than my glue. This is the tribe. And the tribe doesn't want some enormous, mutative, collective consciousness that blasts through that and say, there is no glue. And they all go, no. Where are we going to go on Sunday? How am I going to give my baby a name? I need glue. This is the tribe. This has nothing to do with the tribe. It's alien to the tribe. It's like, the tribe where the first generation, you're going to send a child out of the village to go to university. We've lost her, We've lost him. Oh, it's true. I remember, where was it? Alok. It was near Bilbao, no? That thing we did up in the... I never had such a shock. We went, we were teaching somewhere in somebody's house up in the countryside near Bilbao. And we're driving through, and we get to the village that was just below this place. And it was gorgeous. It was gorgeous, right? In these beautiful, beautiful stone houses, these magnificent hills. It was gorgeous. They were all empty. It was amazing. It was a ghost town. The children grew up. It's a different era in Spain. You don't have to stay in the village and work the rest of your life on the farm. You grow up, you get an education, you go out, you change your life. But that tribe died. The tribe hates the collective, eh? It's terrified of the collective. Why do you think globalization is something that tribal forces are so resistant to? Because they know that they can lose in that battle. They know that they can be overwhelmed by the consciousness field. I mean, tribes are notoriously ignorant. And it's not because they're not intelligent. They are consciously ignorant. They cut things off because they don't want them to infect them. They don't want to break down the glue. They want to hold on to what is important to them, the life force. The collective comes along and says, there's more to life than this. And then mutation comes along. The individual comes along and says, hey, let's do this. And they all go, wow, that's different. The funniest thing for me is that it's the tribe that always calls people who respond to mutation as followers of a sect. Have you ever noticed that? You know, you have some mutative force show up, and there's a whole bunch of people gathered around to hear what they have to say. And it's the tribal people who are saying, they're a sect, they're a sect. You know, and there's the tribe with its glue and its sect and its thing. So the first thing about dealing with formats is that it's absolutely useless. I love teaching useless knowledge. You know? I mean, it's why I gave up teaching detail years ago. You know, because people would walk away saying, Ra, that was really interesting, but what do I do with this? You know? And I thought, nothing. You know, I mean, what are you going to do? You know, you take it in, you think about it, it's nice, you know. It's not about saying to somebody, look, you're a generator, respond. You know, that's my work. I mean, that's why I haven't done this in so many years. Because you see, when you get to this and you look at it, it isn't practical at all. I mean, that's the most difficult thing to understand about the collective and mutation. I mean, mutation's not practical. Eh? You know, when I in one of my many encounters with, you know, the classic closed off, dissatisfied, frustrated housewife, you know, and she sits down for her reading, and I do my Ra Uruhu 51 shock, you know, and I bang her over the head with a hammer, you know, and I tell her about how she hasn't lived her life and she's living with an idiot and blah, blah, blah. You know, her children are going to grow up being insane and all of these things. I mean, you know, she can go home and say, I've had it. And the tribe says, kill that man, you know. The tribe doesn't like this stuff. And of course, that's what this is. This is shit disturbing. This is not about accepting the status quo of being alive. It's not enough. And you can see that doesn't come from the tribe. It comes from the channel 2838. And channel 2838 says, if I'm going to be on this planet, there better be a damn good reason. Because if there isn't a good reason for me to be here, I do not like this. Because it seems rather pointless. And for the vast majority of humanity, nihilism is natural. It seems pointless. The tribe doesn't see it as pointless. Oh, no, no, no. You know, vegetables are worthy. You know, if you're brain damaged and you're part of the tribe, you're worthy. You're part of the glue. You know, this whole sanctity of life business. You know, the anti-abortion, the anti-euthanasia, they're all ants. Uncle Jesus and Antichrist. That's not mine. That was a title of a comedy music album by a very strange guy called Biff Rose. Have to give credit where credit's due. I always thought it was a great title for an album. Almost as good as calling yourself the Dead Kennedys. It's my sense of humor. The tribe doesn't want to be awakened. The tribe doesn't want to be enlightened. The tribe does not want to be taught any lessons. I mean, this is the tribe. And of course, this is, all right, we understand. If you're going to be alive, you're going to be a bioform, that the only way that you're going to be able to do all of these things is that you can't do it alone. You have to do it with others. We're designed genetically to be turned on by what is different. We end up being a very fertile species. We go through this process. The moment you have children, you realize right away that you've got to dedicate most of your life to tribal mechanisms. I mean, you cannot be worrying about consciousness when you're cleaning diapers all the time. I mean, there are things about the tribe that bring you to the reality of what life is. And for me, whenever I look at tribal circuitry, what I see is the mundane plane. And when I say that, again, those who know me long enough know that I really find my greatest joy in just being ordinary. I like washing dishes and looking after my kids and picking them up at school and doing all of these normal things that people do, have a normal life, because it is the mundane plane where we must live. But it isn't the story. You see, when I look at Western society, I see the Western society is caught in the tribal trap. So you end up with the material rat race, and you end up with all of these fears about materialism, and all of it gets deeply emotionalized in the process. And of course, the values, the meaning of life, the beauty of life, all of these things, it's not just about the mundane. It can't be. It can't. So, built into us is this fabulous machine, the format machine. And the format machine, it's necessary just to be able to compete with the tribe. In other words, if you gave the tribe formats, the rest of the process would be blown away. I mean, this is a handicap. And what I mean by that is that we give the collective and individual process a format so it can sort of be on equal ground with the tribe. That it sort of can compete with the tribe. That concepts, look at the mind. I mean, think about it. Look at your mind. Look at that design. There's no tribe there. The closest the tribe gets to the mind is the 45th gate, and that's on the bottom side of the throat. There's no tribe there. Mind is all collective, individual. Why do you think the tribe isn't interested in all that mental stuff that's out there in the globalized, computerized? Can you imagine what it's like to be a tribal elder and somebody brings an internet connection to your village? How spooky that is? And how do you explain all those concepts that are out there? And how do you explain the comparison? That when the child goes to the village elder and says, did you know that just down there, there's this and that and the other thing? And why don't we have this and that and the other thing? Oh, the tribe doesn't like all that. I mean, after all, if you look for the oldest continuous societies on the planet, you'll see that they remain tribal. You can still go into places in Borneo and whatever. They had that with the tsunami in the Andaman Islands. They have very, very rare Aboriginal tribes there that throw spears at airplanes. I mean, they don't want the internet. Messes them up. I mean, that story of in Brazil, maybe 20 years ago, National Geographic, they find one of these lost tribes and they destroyed these people. I mean, the moment that you see what's out there in the collective, the tribe begins to crumble. It's one of the reasons why you've got this enormous fundamentalism today in the world. And I don't just mean Islamic. Christian fundamentalism, Jewish fundamentalism, Hindu fundamentalism. I mean, everybody's a fundamentalist. And it's all this deep, deep fear to what happens when we are dominated by the collective. Now, there's a frightening joke in that. And the frightening joke is that we know that the not-self operates through the mind. And that the mind is only collective and individual and isn't connected to what is the physical life we have. more and more and more, we're going to be driven in the coming epoch to what it is to be collective, and most importantly, what it is to be individual. We are living in a time in which the tribe is under enormous stress, and that the tribe ultimately is going to be destroyed. And when the tribe is destroyed, the whole reproductive, nurturing, territorial process will come to an end. I mean, after all, the only reason that you have borders that are defended is that this is the tribe defending itself. But where are the tribes anymore? If you look at the way in which the world works, you know, there is this huge movement and blending, that the material drive that's rooted in the tribe, that's very material drive, all of this is coming to an end because we have a vast change that's coming to the way in which we are conditioned by larger cycles. The whole tribal process is coming to an end. What is going to matter in all of that is that basically at the simplest level, we are going to go from, united we stand, divided we fall, which has really been the motto of the cross of planning, hold everybody together with a good glue, territorial, God, whatever. And then they're going to be strong. They're going to be able to defend themselves from enemies. They're going to be able to look after themselves. All of this is going to be replaced by, if I don't do it, no one else will. Which is a very different world. We here, other than the few of us who are really freaks, have no idea what that means. Because we live our lives based on the security that the tribe has provided us with. Communities where we feel like there are support, institutions that are supposedly there to protect us. And yet all of that is coming to an end. And part of my goal in taking the time to go through this deeply is to give you a sense of the forces that are really driving us into the next epoch. In other words, where we are going mutatively, away from the density of our tribal bonds and much more into the openness to mutation. As you can see, I have here the format energies, and I'm going to begin with the logic. I always have to begin with logic, and you always have to begin with logic because it's the very basis of life. A cell, by the way, is not tribal. A cell is collective with a little mutative tail. It's a 15-5 with a 3. It's sort of like... The very basis of life is that life is a pattern. Now, in fact, it may be a pattern that is so vast that it's almost impossible to see. It is the most extraordinary of patterns because within the pattern itself is chaos. And chaos itself is a pattern within the pattern. So patterns are something that are quite extraordinary. It is the reason that we can talk in numbers and global cycles and incarnation crosses and all of the things that come with being able to have a pattern system. I mean, despite the fact that I am a freak, and it is my ability to explain knowing that makes me useful, the knowledge that I bring is very, 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 very logical. It could not be anything else. In other words, that's why we have the ability through the knowledge, each and every one of us, to experiment with it within the logical sense, that is, theory put into practice. And to be able to see in the empirical sense that this is correct, that it operates. So logic is very important as a force in and of itself. So when we're dealing with the collective format, one of the things to understand about the logic collective is that this is if integration, individual integration, is the backbone of our primitive survival system, then what you're looking at here in the logical framework is that you're looking at what makes life possible within patterns, or how patterns themselves provide for the opportunity of life. No pattern, no life. It's as simple as that. We're going to start with the 52nd gate. I want to talk about the gates before I talk about the actual format channel. There are many different ways and many different techniques that I've taught people over the years to be able to look at things, to be able to see them. After all, human design is really seeing. It's about seeing. You know, this is the great truth of this knowledge, is that to be able to see that body graph and to be able to see it with depth is what it's about. And that means that you have to have many things underneath the surface of your seeing to allow you to grasp what, in fact, you're actually looking at. It's like any gate. When I think about a gate, I don't just think about the gate. I think about every gate is connected to 3 different crosses, as an example. Every gate is in a quarter. You know, I mean, every gate is in a center. There are many, many ways of looking at things, of seeing them within a context. And once you have that context, you know, it's like I never have to look at a chart and think about what I'm looking at. You know, I see a chart and it's almost like that person is alive, in the sense that I've seen so many and I've been with so many that there is this, and you have this ability to filter down into its depth. So let's look at the 52. Great name, Keeping Still Mountain. It says temporary and self-imposed inaction for the benefit of assessment. Now you can tell right away that this is not a sacral gate. You know, inaction is not the sacral. The sacral does not get involved in inaction. I mean, I want you to understand that there is a deep dynamic between the root, the adrenaline system, and the sacral, our fertility and power motor. And that their relationship, that's why you get depression out of it, their relationship is not... The electromagnetic between the root and the sacral is very uncomfortable. Let's put it that way. It's not like an electromagnetic anywhere else where there is this lovely spark that could turn into the other side, but there's this attraction, repulsion, and it's kind of nice. There's much more repulsion than attraction in a format. Because the job of the root center is to pull, is a funny word, but to pull the sacral away from being tribal. This is what the root does. You know, the root is pulling the sacral away from its 59-27 kind of, you know, because you have to understand, if you look at the centering circuit, or you look at the, you know, the minor circuitries. Minor circuitries are very important. When you look at the tribal minor circuitry, you've got a sacral, you've got a spleen, you've got the emotions, 59-6, 50-27, nothing else, boom. And you begin to see that the sacral, standing alone in a circuit, is only tribal. Everything else is passing through. I mean, the hard wiring is the 59 to the 27. It's hard wiring. This is the tribe. And the sacral is fundamental. I mean, after all, think about what the sacral is at a biological level. It's the ovaries and the testes. It's only about reproduction. See, what the root center does is that... I'm about to be really nasty. The root center does what a projector does to a generator. Yeah? It says, let me have some of this for my purposes, not yours. And that's precisely what the root, through the formats, is trying to do to the sacral. And the sacral gets depressed. And I mean, depression isn't what you think it is. Depression is the moment that this line of energy gets broken. Okay? This line of energy that runs across the middle of the sacral to either side. I mean, the only way to really understand the way the sacral works is to see that these gates that go either way, They would like to have all of the sacral's energy. All of it. No. I don't want this energy to go towards Tantra. I want this energy to go towards reproduction. You know? Don't pull this away. I need this. I can't make babies otherwise. You know, I can't get my bonding partner otherwise. Don't take this energy away, because if you take it away, I'm not going to be able to look after my children, says the 27. I need to have all this energy to be able to nurture my young. It's not like the sacral center likes what happens when these things from the root go pouring through it. Because the sacral was designed this way. And only this way. And then you have a whole different picture of the sacral. I can remember one of the very earliest drawings. I tried to do drawings to demonstrate the way the streams of energy go through the sacral, because you can see, for example, that the 9 crosses to the 5, the 42 crosses to the 29. It's a repetition of the crossing mechanism that you have between the head center, in the ajna gates. The way they cross mentally, the 4 is going to go over to the 17, the 47 is going to go over to the 11. And when you actually see that drawing, what you realize is that the only natural sacral lines are horizontal. And the others are just moving through and picking up the energy of it. Now, I catch myself every once in a while because it sounds so damn linear. But you also have to see something that, like anything, you can see it the other way around. For example, you can see how the logical cell had to tap into the sacral and use the sacral for reproductive purposes. It works both ways. It's not like the collective ignores the tribe, because we are in it. And in the same way that the root center tries to take or get access to use sacral energy for its own purposes, the collective uses the tribe for its own purposes. The individual uses the tribe for its own purposes, or tries to. Like the traveling salesman who wants the farmer's daughter, I'd like to take advantage of some of this local fertility. Yeah, be careful. You may end up having to live in the village the rest of your life. So the first lesson about formats is that formats are like thieves in the night. They're sneaking in the sacral and going, I'm going to take some of this. They siphon off sacral energy. And if you really blow that up into a larger view, you can see that this has been our history for the last several thousand years. Slowly but surely, the collective and individual have been tapping in more and more and more and more into the sacral power. Taking from the tribe. And in taking from the tribe, taking power from the tribe to try to move towards the collective possibilities, or the mutative possibilities, to make us more than just sacral reproductive beings. Now, it's not like you have this battle going on inside of you and that there's a real conflict between your sacral and the root center. And yet, in saying that, I want you to understand that there is. Because otherwise we would not get depression. We would just simply not have it. And of course, depression is the way in which the sacral tries to stop you from taking its energy away from its tribal, mundane commitments. And of course, the sacral doesn't think. It's not like your sacral's in there saying, okay, the tribe's trying to get this, and we're going to work out this. It doesn't do that. It's just a natural thing. The sacral naturally wants its energy for the 59 and the 27 processes. That's what it wants its energy for. And that is the direct connection between the sacral sexuality, the sacral at an organic level. Only those two gates truly express it. What's interesting for me is that if it weren't for mutation, all humans would be female. Well, it's true. I mean, if it weren't for mutation, all humans would be female. Because when you look just at the mechanism of the tribe itself and this line going across, this is the potential of the female alone to make another, the cell to split and divide. And we know that there are many species, for example, that if there are no males, if there is a catastrophe, that the females will all be Virgin Marys, which I rather like. It's kind of cute. We also know that all fetuses are female in the beginning of their process, and that it is a mutation within the process, in the womb, in which they become male. Now, the tribe would have been happy with all female, in and of itself, which doesn't necessarily make men feel good. But then again, it really does explain why all men are frightened from the moment they come out of a woman, about women. Terrified. I've never met a man that isn't terrified of women. There is this visceral fear, deep in their socks. And then they put on this macho, It's really cute. All right. 52nd gate. Temporary and self-imposed inaction. The sacral keeps going until it's exhausted. Its natural tendency is to be deeply, deeply, deeply connected simply to its energy flow. And the 52nd gate says, will you sit down for a minute? I mean, it's just like that. Can't you just sit down? It's like in the early years when I was living here as a freak, and I'd be sitting on some mountainside. And down below would be some woman who was probably maybe 35 or 40, but she looked 60. She was bent over all the time, her hands in the ground. And it's like there I was sitting on the side of the hill. And I'm in my mutative, collective, non-mundane, out there zone. And I'm looking at her, and she's grinding away. And I mean, this is what the sacral does to people. They're all bent over and grinding away. And the root center says, stop. And you'll notice, by the way, that all root center gates that here in the formats, they're all doing the same thing. They're all going, wait a second. So the 52nd gate says, look, sit still. And the tribe says, what for? I have things to do, I have to look after this, and I got to feed that one, and I've got to build this, and I've got to make sure that's done, and I've got this, and I've got a full schedule. I can't just sit. I mean, we think that people naturally get rest for their work. But human history doesn't look like that. It's only a recent phenomena, which has nothing to do with the tribe, because as far as the tribe's concerned, you can work till you die. Every day, you work. That's it. That's life. So the 52 comes along and says, whoa, stop and smell the roses, baby. Sit on a rock for a moment. And the tribe says, why? And the 52 can't give them an answer. It's what's so difficult for the tribe. There's no answer. The answer is just sit still for a minute. You never know what can happen. But sit still. And in most cases, for logic, that sitting still is looking forward. It is so natural for a logical person, in a moment of stillness, to see the future. Because that's what they do naturally. And in that moment that the 52 holds you and puts you in a place, instantaneously, your process goes like this. What's down there? And you start thinking beyond yourself. You're no longer working. You're out there looking into the patterns of the future. And you see, the patterns are natural. I mean, they're natural. Most human beings never understand that everything that they do in their life can be placed within the context of a pattern. And yet we spend most of our lives being totally ignorant of them. It's one of my favorite stories. I lived in the deep Campo here for many years. And my neighbor, nice man, Payes, nice farm, grew marijuana. I didn't know that. Quite a character. And I noticed that whenever the moon was full, he was pumping water. And I thought, how impressive. You know, he knows the pattern. He's in tune with the pattern. Eh? And he came over one day, he was bringing me wood, and I said to him, you know, I said, that's really something. Did you know that every time the moon's full, you pump water? If you say so. You know, that's not his plan. It's not conscious. It's like those days in Ibiza where no matter where you go, everybody's plowed their field on the same day. You know, it's like there's this magic messenger that goes flying across the island to all the payeses saying, okay, today's the day. I mean, there were days where it seemed so unbelievable to me. You know, you'd be walking along wherever you looked. We have all these patterns. We live all these patterns all the time. It's like people that are constantly caught up with, coincidences and blah. Come on, This is the world, it's patterns. So the moment that you can sit still is the moment that you can begin to see patterns. And you don't see patterns when you're working, when you're caught in the sacral vibration. This channel is called concentration. But what's interesting is that it's a design of determination. This determination not to be caught in the thrall of the tribe. It's very, very, very difficult to sit still. I mean, you know that. Every student knows that. Everybody who's ever taken time off. I mean, people think doing nothing is easy. There is nothing more difficult than doing nothing. Nothing more difficult. The whole conditioning of the planet is opposed to it. I mean, if you do nothing, you're a bum. And if you're lucky, you're a sadhu. But basically, it's the same thing. You're doing nothing. It's difficult to do nothing. But if you don't do nothing, you get nothing, which is a nice joke. If you don't take that moment to sit, you're never going to catch the patterns. Never. I mean, to me, this is the great Buddha gate. And I only say that because it's the kind of expression people understand, not because I'm a fan of Buddha. This idea that you sit down under the tree. Good. Everybody, every day, should take a few moments to sit down and do nothing. It's wonderful. It's good for the soul. And in the collective logical sense, that moment of being still is the beginning of the growth of your consciousness. And logical consciousness, the ability to look at life and where it goes. Only when you begin to look at your life logically and see where it's taking you, do you realize deep within you, you better do something quick to make it better and different. I mean, the magic for anyone who is unaware. See, unaware beings, not self beings, can't afford to be still. It's a great risk for them. I don't have any time to learn this, they'll say. It's a great risk for them. Because what the stillness will do is it will show you your pattern. I mean, when you see your pattern from the not-self perspective, when I looked at my life before any of this was going on and I would have that moment of looking, it was like, oh, shit, this is the way it's going to be. Chaos, pain, meaninglessness, all of that stuff. So, sitting still has its risks. And you see, the first thing about being still in the logical sense is that if you are not self, and that's the vast majority of humanity, that what sitting still should bring you is depression. See, remember I started by saying depression isn't a bad thing. This is not about good or bad. It's a thing. I mean, it's just a thing. It's an it. Right? And how magical it is. I mean, it isn't in the sense that the way in which we treat depression today is very dangerous, because we treat depression as a sickness, particularly in the cases of individuals in which melancholy leads to depression. And all of that can be healed through understanding. But you see, depression in this context is a necessary goad, G-O-A-D. It's an old biblical word. It's a prod. It's pushing things. Depression is there to actually push us to accept the fact that we are righteously depressed, because what the pattern shows us is a meaningless life. Remember that the formats are here to expand our consciousness. I mean, as you will see, by the time you get into the rest of the circuit, it becomes less and less powerful, unfortunately. It gets caught up in whatever those channels and those gates have to do. But when you're at the very core of the format, you're looking at something so beautiful, because for me it's so obvious. No format, no grace. And then I understand pain. I understand the pain of seeing the meaninglessness of your life. After all, this is what I've been doing for nearly 20 years, is dealing with the pain of people's lives. And yet to understand that unless you feel the pain, there's no hope. I mean, there's no hope. Ignorance as bliss is just tribe. You can be blissfully ignorant within the tribe. It's allowed. But the moment that you sit still, that you really look at your life, if you don't get depressed, I'm really worried about you. Because you should be depressed. I mean, this is what the formats do. They're wonderful. I mean, I know I got a 60th gate. I know what that 60th gate did to me. We'll get there. But, no greater gift, at least for the expansion of our consciousness. I mean, I am grateful to the tribe every day. I like my tribal life. I mean, I have no objection to the mechanism of partnership and children and home and all of this stuff. I enjoy it. And yet at the same time, I recognize that I only enjoy it because of the level of my consciousness. I mean, I lived that way before in my life and didn't enjoy it. Didn't like it at all. And all of this is because of what the format energies bring to us. They bring us the power to compete with tribal necessity, basic necessities of life. The sacral center on the other side, the ninth gate. The ninth gate does not want to concentrate on stillness. The ninth gate wants to concentrate on mating. It wants to concentrate on nourishing. See, sacral gates are all naturally tribal, and no matter what circuit they're in. I mean, it's all about reproduction and nurturing. It's all about fertility. It's all about the maintenance of the species. Remember that if you could... When I was given this knowledge, I got to see the body graph as a three-dimensional object. I represented it as a two-dimensional object. But I mean, if you could really see the sacral center, you would see that these streams that are moving through the sacral, that are collective and individual, it's almost like they're grafted on. You know the way you take a tree and you graft on a branch from another tree? That's what it's like. And the only natural thing that's coming out are these wings on either side. The third gate determines whether we're going to be male or female. The ninth gate actually gives you the power to focus your fertility, to focus your nurturing. I mean, they're sacral gates. However, the ninth gate on the other side is that 52. And that 52, once it meets with that ninth gate, you've got something that's neither. I mean, it's really here in the format energies that you begin to grasp the quantum nature of the physics in human design. You know, I tried to describe that as an analogy to the way we have aura constructs. We have the inanimate object that has only one gate. So what that's telling you is that if you have a single gate coming out of a center, basically it's inanimate. Now again, that's in quotes. In other words, it is dormant, it's not active, all of those kinds of things. It's basically inanimate. And then it meets one at the other end. And that one at the other end alone is basically inanimate. The smallest aura that we have for a biological form is the single cell, where you have 3 gates, 1 channel as a potential. And the moment that you have a channel as a potential, you have that quantum and you have that spark that we call life. A channel, that's why definition is the heart of human design. Because out of definition, you get to know exactly what you need to know. What's reliable, what your strategy is, what your authority is, all of that comes out of definition, because definition is your imprinted life force. It's your life force. So when we're talking about the formats, which is why I wanted to start with the gates, the 52nd gate says, sit still and just let's see what happens. There's more to life than just being busy and running around. The 9th gate by itself says, where can I focus my energy on reproduction or nurturing? Because that's what it's saying by itself. Now it's saying it in a logical thing, in a logical context. But in and of itself, by itself, it's not really collective or logical. By itself, it'll just obey the parameters and demands of the sacral's basic imperative to reproduce and nurture. But the moment that they hook up, then you get this tremendous clash. It's a clash. And out of that clash comes this life force that's not this and not that. It's not sitting still to focus on reproduction. It's not the reproductive energy to focus that's suddenly being pulled into being still. It becomes a life force of concentration. Nothing more. And the concentration has no direction. It's just concentration. If you could see somebody who only had this channel and you could film them 24 hours a day, you would see that there are times in the day where they do what psychologists used to call a Brown study. And a Brown study is unfocused eyes staring. Now that is the best image I can give you of this channel as a life force. Glazed over eyes, and yet at the same time focused. Because you see, part of the depression is this channel doesn't know what to concentrate on. It's not like it's built into it to know. It's just the energy to be concentrated. Nothing more, nothing less. And one of the real dilemmas with format energies is to understand that without some place to put that energy comes depression. It looks like somebody meditating. I mean, that's the joke. You know, there's this glazed over, very peaceful, very still, concentrated frequency, and absolutely nothing is happening. And when the tribe sees that, they get so upset. You know, what are you doing? I'm waiting. I mean, it's a generator, right? I'm waiting. The hell are you waiting for? I don't know. But I know there's something out there for me to look at. At some point I'm going to see it. I mean, this is the image of these people who go up into the Himalayas, you know, and you sit on a mountaintop and you stare out. I know, I've been there, you know. You have no idea what the hell you're doing. I mean, you can make up reasons, but it has nothing to do with that. You know, you're just staring. But there is magic in the power of that concentration, despite having a direction that is so liberating. The only people that can truly empty themselves out are people who have this format. You know, you hear that in the East a lot, this concept of, emptying yourself. Now, really, it isn't so much that you're emptying anything else out. It's that the concentration field can be so profound that nothing else touches you. Now, obviously, if you bring that into the mundane plane, and you bring that into the way in which the not-self operates, you can have some terrible situations. Because you can have somebody in your life that's deeply concentrated on nothing and has no room for you. It's nice that you're musing, dear, but would you take out the garbage? These people that stare out the window. Life is going on around them. They have no room for the mundane. They have no idea what they're looking at. They have no idea what's there to see. I mean, the cruelest thing about frequencies is that if you don't know yourself, if you don't operate correctly in the first place, you never get the direction for the focus of this kind of power. You don't. And what you get is that format beings are the great generator slaves. I mean, they're the ultimate generator slaves. Ultimate. It's exam time. I still don't understand why we don't. I think Jovian should do that. We make a fortune. We provide concentration formats for people who are sitting in examination rooms. We send somebody in there, and everybody will really be focused and concentrated. It's an incredible energy, after all. And what happens is that most human beings, in the way in which we operate, we're always siphoning off from these slaves their energy. I mean, they're real slaves. Because it's always getting, I notice this over the years. You take keynotes and you take things and people begin to, put them together and they get a certain frame in their heads. It's like this journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. This assumption that when you're dealing with the focused and concentrated field, that it actually knows where the journey is going. Concentration is the beginning, and you concentrate on nothing. I mean, if you think about, all these very cute Zen stories, where, somebody wants to be a Zen master, and they arrive, and, they say they'd like to see the master, and they get sent off somewhere. Every day they come back, and they want to see the master, and of course this goes on for years and years and years. And the whole point about stories like that, or the what they're getting at, is that until you get to a point that the stillness is there, then nothing is going to fill it up. I mean, nothing. I mean, it's the whole thing about this format. What this format says is, look, unless you can get past being totally conditioned by the demands of the mundane plane, there is nowhere to go. None. None. And these format energies, these are generators. I mean, they're generators. So the moment that you have the life force that we can understand as concentration, you have to see there's nothing truly to concentrate on until there's something to respond to. And only when there's something to respond to will that gift of concentration finally be able to live itself out, because concentration has to have something. What it has to have is that it's got to have a pattern. If there's no pattern for the focus, there's nothing to do. Nothing. There is simply the stillness. And when you look particularly at the way in which they try to introduce spirituality in the East, you will see that they spend most of their time trying to bring you to stillness first. The whole business of whether it's meditation or yoga or any of these things, whole business of that is to bring you to stillness first. The stillness in and of itself has no purpose. I mean, the stillness has no reward. The stillness isn't the thing. But you see, if you cannot get out of the thrall of the tribal sacral, these are generators after all. If you cannot get out of that, there's no way for you to go beyond it. And of course, our whole future, everything about the consciousness growth of this planet, is determined by the fact that if we are, and by the way, just for those of you that are interested, we have 3 kinds of spirituality that comes into the lives of humanity through the consciousness field, rather than the tribe that you find here in the formats. You know, logical spirituality. And logical spirituality begins with stillness. Stillness. Until you stop, you don't know whether life is good or bad or beautiful, or you have no idea. The very stillness separates you from the mundane plane. And once there's that stillness, then, like waking from a dream, you can enter into a different reality. Because you have managed to bypass the conditioning power of the material, sexual, mundane plane. Not easy. Not easy that the only reward for stillness is stillness. You know, it's like St. Augustine's great line about patience. He said the only reward for patience was patience. Nobody wants to hear that. You mean I worked that hard just to work that hard again? Stillness is very difficult. I mean, it's very difficult. Okay, so the moment that you're dealing with the format, the moment that the format is alive, that's the moment that you can begin to map out where it can go. Now, obviously, it can go in 2 different ways. You know, we can follow it this way, or we can follow it this way, and they're 2 very different things. When you're looking at the movement in the logical system, through the spleen, to the throat and upwards, you're looking at the part that has to do with the most sophisticated work that comes from stillness. But in order to be able to get to a point where you can develop critical judgmental talent, and through that critical judgmental talent, find the power to be able to put into practice theories that are logical, you need to have an enormous amount of identity. Look at the tribe. The tribe has no G center. You can't call the 2551 tribal, even though it comes out of the ego. It's sort of a touch. But of course, that is an individual channel. The tribe doesn't have an identity. They have an ego. Consciousness seeks an identity beyond the ego. That's why those that are going to transform our lives, so many of them are initiators. That is, they carry the channel that links the ego to the identity. But it's the identity that this is all about. What is the goal of stillness? The goal of stillness is to bring everyone into the flow. That's the goal of stillness. I mean, think about that. To bring everyone into a collective flow. And to bring everyone into a collective flow through the leadership of an alpha. And stillness knows that you cannot judge, that you cannot experiment, that you cannot identify with experiments, that you cannot postulate theories unless you create a collective flow and a collective leadership that supports it. the collective artificially, the logic, and you'll see it works for all of them, logic has to find a way to compete with the tribe. The one who leads the tribe is a 45, and the 45 leads by blood. And that means either by blood in the sense that they inherit their job because they're part of the high end of the class system, or by blood in the sense that they kill somebody to get their job. But that's the 45. It's a blood business. And they're the ones, the kings, the queens, the pashas, they're the ones that rule the tribe. And they rule the tribe with an iron fist. The collective says, no, which is what the tribe doesn't like. The collective says, out of my stillness, I'm able to see that the only way for us in the future is for us to be guided collectively by a logical leader. Not only that, but a logical leader that has to be elected, selected. I mean, think about the difference between the logical leader, the connection between the throat and the G center, which is a projected channel, and the tribal leader, the 45 to the 21, which is an ego manifester. I mean, that is a very different kind of leader. The ego manifester hits you on the head first. But in order for the collective leader to hit you on the head, the majority has to agree to it. Because the elective leader is selected or elected by a majority, because that is the collective logic system. So from that position of stillness, in order to be able to pursue logical consciousness, there has to be a collective flow and there has to be a collective authority. And only with that is that possible. And you can see that, for example, in the relationship between politics and science today. You know, we all know that science has touched thresholds that are very difficult for many moral situations in various societies. And you can see that there are certain institutions, certain governments that are saying, all right, you can do this kind of research, and other governments saying, no, you can't do this kind of research. And it's one of the things to understand about the collective process. You know, collective leadership is not something that is all the same. All tribes are run the same way. But the collective isn't, as we are able to see, because the collective is selected by those that are part of that flow. So stillness and the ability to be able to develop judgmental comparative knowledge, this can only happen within a collective society and can only happen in a collective logical society. The other thing is that the mystery of our lives, that is our genetic mystery, our cellular mystery, is all locked within the collective infrastructure. And so to understand the meaning of life, and remember, the formats are here to take us beyond the mundane survival. They're here ultimately to follow the voice of the 28th gate that says we must have a purpose. So in order for logic to come to grips with purpose, logic has to identify the meaning of this and that. It has to look at everything that makes up the pattern. You know, so this is the beginning of what we call science. You know, this insistence that we understand the pattern, that we investigate the pattern. This is the way that logic tries to get to the meaning of life. Which is often, you know, you end up with the glue of the tribe being opposed to the scientists. You know, God and religion against science. You know, you have this in the States. It's amazing. You have places where teachers are forced to include creationism in their lectures to their students. I mean, think about that. You know, creationism says that 5,264 years ago, to be exact, God created this planet. Now, the only reason that you find dinosaur bones is that God is trying to fool us. I don't think God did a very good job with that one. But you really have to understand the pressure within the collective. that the collective has a real problem, the logic system has a real problem when it's dealing with the tribe, because the way in which it approaches the meaning of life has nothing to do with the tribal security of believing in something that never has to be proved. Nobody in the tribe wants to know whether God exists or not, because that's not what they're about. They're quite happy to assume there's a God, their God, looking after them. And don't mess with that, because that's what they want. And the logic system goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the mechanism of life. You know, what people are doing today in the brain, you know, must give cramps to every priest and whatever, everywhere. Because we're talking about things that they don't want to hear anymore. I mean, they don't. They don't want to hear these things. You can already see how much of this planet, you know, how, despite the fact that we seem to have this internet penetration everywhere, how much censorship there really is. How little real knowledge gets percolated down to the average being. The logic collective is very, very dangerous to the tribe. And where do you think they fight their battle? In the format. In the format. You give me somebody who's carrying this format energy, and in their logical pursuit, they come to the point of understanding that free will is just the genetic imprint, has nothing to do with God. Has nothing to do with options. Has nothing to do with being able to get it if you don't have it. Now, in order for them to get to that point, the battle within them to be still enough to get to that point is devastating. And even though what they discover logically opens their consciousness to another level, they get depressed at finding out. It's like Galileo getting depressed because he found out that the Earth wasn't the center of the solar system. It was depressing. And of course, again, we have a misunderstanding of this word. All depression really is the resentment of the sacral to the pressure of the root. That's all it is. And the moment that you're operating correctly, you know, it's not like you'll never have depression if you're a format being, but it's never going to have that kind of hold on you that you interpret it within your consciousness as something that is the matter with you. As a matter of fact, if you're depressed and you're a format person, all that's telling you is that your root center's winning in the battle with the sacral to be able to go beyond the mundane. And it's the whole thing, Kundalini, the whole process of our true spiritual dynamic. It's rooted all down here in this root center. And this is where the conflict is. This is where we need to transcend the lock of the tribe. This is the only opportunity that we have. I always notice that in my teaching. I'm a 60, I don't have the 3, and of course I'm only individual in my design. And it's always so obvious to me when I'm in a room and there's no 3. It's very nice for me that I gave myself an incredible 50th birthday present. I had a child when I was 50. And he's got the 360. And, you know, I got this permanent mutation gift in my life, you know, for my 60th gate. And from the moment that he came into the world, Jovian has existed. He mutated my life. And I mean, he mutated my life. It looked like he was mutating my life on the mundane plane. You know, he was born premature. He nearly died. I became bankrupt overnight. All of these things took place in the moment that this mutative force came into my life. And out of that came a stillness, limitation. I'm a 60. Came this deep, deep limitation that said, all right, you know, you're going to have to accept all of this. And in the moment of acceptance, all the possibilities of what I could do were there in front of me. I mean, it was so interesting. And from that point on, it all changed. But this is one of the things to understand about formats. Without the input of the format, it's impossible for us to get beyond whatever the constraints of the mundane plane are. We need them. Now, it's not like we don't have them. They're everywhere all the time. Wherever you go, you're going to meet this energy. It's always in the world. It's part of the dynamic of the planet. And we all have access to it one way or another. It's not just about saying you've got it in your design or whatever. It's like anything. It's like having the 10th gate. We know that humanity is supposed to learn how to behave. And you don't have to have the 10th gate yourself to be impacted by all the 10th gates on planet Earth and the 10th gates that are around you in your life. Format energies, they're really, for me, this is the source of our greatness. Can be, for me. It's how I see them. They lift us above the mundane. And in no easy way. It's not easy. It's never easy. It's easy to go up the sides. It's really easy to go up the sides. Because to go up the sides, you're already equipped. But to go all the way up the center, that's what it's all about. That's where the battle is. This is where you either get a chance to rise up, all this idea of rising up, and higher consciousness. It's just this struggle to go from the root, to be able to sidestep the sacral and at the same time take some of its fertility with you. And to be able to enter into that process that elevates you beyond the mundane. Now, by the way, when I say things like that, it sounds really it isn't. Any little step beyond the mundane is enough. It's not about great leaps of consciousness. It's about slowly but surely seeing that all of us have an opportunity, that life itself is more than survival. That there are other things that make life beautiful, that enrich our process, that are necessary for us if we're going to fulfill our purpose. And that the fulfillment of our purpose is never connected with just the mundane. It cannot be. And that it's only through this mechanism, this struggle between the root and the sacral, such a battle goes on there. That there is a chance to go beyond this, bread and butter world.